16 players released within the last 2 weeks, a handful of professionals and kids left to carry the can for next season, no money to buy new replacements. Your commercial manager has now been relieved of his duties this week, we hear. There's still no manager or coaching staff in place, still no buyer for the club. It's losing reportedly tens of thousands of pounds every week. Now, you try and convince supporters that Carlisle United has any kind of future under your ownership.
Well, Paul, you say no players. Do you count Weaver, Birch, Andrews, Whitehead, Madison, Murphy, Galloway, Thwaites, Thornton, Slavin, Foreign, 3 first-year professionals, not to mention Johnny Allen was offered an excellent contract, so I'm given to believe by the directors. I don't think that sounds like a club with no players. You know, the industry currently is in crises. The clubs up and down the country throughout the Nationwide League in any event are doing precisely what the directors of the football club have had to do themselves this year, which is look at costs very carefully and inevitably make some reduction in their cost base. So what you would hope the fans would understand, Paul, is that the club needs their support more than at any other time in its history.
Indeed so, but you look at the situation, 16 players released, Michael. I mean, that's more than any other club in the Football League this summer.
Don't think so. That's not the information I've been given. I don't know where you've got your information from. What you are obviously counting in that 16 are some players that haven't actually played first-team football. So, you know, it's tradition every year that, and has been ever since the 1880s, that clubs get released. I think what's focusing everyone's attention at the moment is that clubs are releasing unprecedented numbers right throughout the industry. Football is in crises. Carlisle is absolutely no different from any other club in the land.
OK, let's start taking your calls. By the way, the number to ring 01228 592 592. Let's go to the phones then. Joining us on the line is John in Carlisle. John, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your question to Michael Knighton.
Good afternoon, Michael.
Hi.
I was wondering what made you change from being the saviour of Carlisle United, as you appeared to be when you first arrived, to the destroyer of Carlisle United, as you seem to be now. I mean, if you've lost interest in the club, I mean, why don't you just go ahead and sell it?
You know I've not lost interest in the football club. You know what's been happening over the last couple of years. I'm exactly the same man that arrived in 1992. I haven't changed at all. What has changed is this. We've got very proactive fans now, quite rightly so. I've been an advocate of that all my life. I think we've got the time is ready and has been ready really for the last 20 years, as far as I'm concerned, for fans to really get involved in their football club. Anyone who ever doubts me on that only needs to read the News and Star, 26th of January 1996, where I offered the club to the fans 51% plus control, and that was when we were flying, when we were top of the league and going to Wembley. So I haven't changed at all. What has changed is this. You've got a culture of aggression, you've got a culture of hostility, and they point the finger at owners up and down the country if they fail to deliver on the field of play. That is traditional, I'm afraid. What is happening here, especially with a group of fans, not just Qists, but anyone that can readily get the support of the local newspaper in an all-embracing fashion, you're going to have a major problem. Bitterness is going to win the day if we're not careful. And all that's happened is that we have had a massive campaign. I don't know what the next campaign is going to be. We've had to. Is it going to be Michael Knighton eats Cumbrian Baby, or he arrives back from Mars? I just don't know. It's a travesty for the good supporters of Carlisle, who are now coming forward in numbers.
I quite agree. I mean, I'm not one of these CUST members. I mean, I appreciate what you did for the club when you first came, but your attitude just seems to have changed over this last few months. I mean, you were really, I mean, we remember the glory days at Wembley, the promotions and how you got
the best years of the club's ever had. Hang on, I've not changed. What has happened is you've got this hysterical campaign going on, really working in tandem. The News and Star and its editorial team are absolutely convinced the only way to drive my family, me in particular as owner, away from that club is to be as hostile and as confrontational as possible. That isn't the way People should be working together. People should be pulling together. I've never had any sensible dialogue with anyone from Cuist. I don't know why. They've just always said from day one they'll never speak to me. I don't know why they've taken that view. Well, I do actually.
Okay.
To be frank.
Let's give the two organisations a chance to reply. You mentioned there, John. Thanks very much for your call. Among the panellists this afternoon, alongside the Carlisle United owner, is Vic Gibson, news editor at the local newspaper, the News and Star, and as was mentioned, the independent supporters group Cuist secretary Alan Steele. Vic, if I can come to you first, what do you say to what Michael Knighton's just said about your paper?
Well, I reject almost all of what Michael's just said there. Clearly, it's not a hysterical campaign. It's a measured campaign in response to the way the club has been run for the last 5 years. I mean, it's all well and good, Michael, sitting in a very cool, calm and collected way. But what the newspaper has been doing, as we always do, is reflecting the way people feel, and they don't feel cool, calm and collected about their club at the moment. They feel very bitter and very angry, and we are simply reflecting that.
Alan Steele from Cuist. Obviously, your organisation has come in for a great deal of criticism from Michael Knighton. He seems to feel as though you're responsible, perhaps, for the state the football club's in at the moment. What do you say?
Yeah, well, we represent 1,000 of the fans, and I've got to say that we wouldn't have had an organisation and the finance that we had got if we'd had any association with the current ownership of the club. That was made clear from the start. I would make a couple of points. First of all, the best years of the club was some years ago in the top of the first division, and certainly the debt situation at the moment, whereby it looks from day to day that people are being laid off, they're unable to pay certain bills, they're unable to meet the transfer fees. I think that's ever been as bad. As far as our relationship with the current owners are concerned, at the AGM at the end of last year, the current owner said, in words of one syllable, that he would be prepared to let the tenancies drop to 1 before he would be involved in any arrangement which involved Cuist being involved in the football club. Now, I think that's fairly straightforward, and that's the situation.
Michael Knighton, your response?
Well, that's after, of course, this hostile campaign they've had from day one, which is positively I've found bizarre. People that have known me in this town, and I've got a lot of friends in this town, despite what the paper writes every day about me. They know me. I'm a balanced individual. I'm an approachable individual. I cannot for the life of me understand, especially when you look back to March, year 2000, Brian Hall's independent Carlisle Supporters Trust movement. He came to see me at a meeting on the 23rd of March 2000. We were extremely positive. We had an excellent exchange of ideas. We wanted to get supporters involved fully, and I gave them every support possible. That all petered out. The next thing I know, some months later, Alan Steele's name appeared. I'd never met Alan. I'd been at the club for 8 years and had never met him. I don't know where Alan was in 1996 when I offered the club to the fans. John Wilson's opposite me, and John will forgive me, but I think my memory serves me correct, but he actually poo-pooed the cooperative idea in 1996 in an article a couple of days later. I will obviously stand corrected if that's not true.
It is incorrect. Yeah.
But I do remember that John was quoted in a newspaper piece, and his comments, I think, were a bit unhelpful. So John has clearly had a road to Damascus experience over the last 5 years, because he is one of the very strong supporters of Cuist. I have to tell you, I've got no argument at all with Cuist or any fan or anybody in this town. I just haven't. What I've got an argument with is the personal vilification of myself and my family. This personalisation of the whole situation has been regrettable and unhelpful. That's my bone of contention. I will speak and listen to anyone with the interests of the club at heart. I really will. But clearly I've got to defend myself when Alan plucks a comment out of an AGM, which I have to say he came to be disruptive and asked some questions which were particularly, I think, irrelevant almost, because he cited the debt position and said how unmanageable it must be, when in point of fact it was the lowest debt position we've had in about the, certainly the last 7 years.
Michael, is it personal against Alan Steele?
I would hope it's not personal. Alan assures me it's not. But when I have listened to him when he's done interviews, and when I've tried to make contact with Alan via David Clarke and Mike Curry, I've only ever had the responses, they will not talk to me.
Alan Steele, is it personal against Michael Knighton?
Not one iota. You know, when I'll be dead and gone in 20, 30 years, and so will Mr. Knighton, and this football club will still be here. We had to put together an organisation which would prevent any repetition of what had happened over the last 2 or 3 years. Just to pick up on a couple of points, I'm actually reading from a letter here from the football club to Mrs. Rowley regarding the independent association, which was...
Is that from me, Alan?
It's from Mr. Dowick.
Oh, and I left the company at this time then.
Will you tell me, Michael?
Okay.
This is Carlisle United Football Club. It says the initiative of a Carlisle United Supporters Trust is a club initiative. From this day forward, the club will decide how best it intends to coordinate the project. As far as I am concerned, the executive officers of the club will carry out research in how best such a scheme may proceed. I want to make it absolutely clear to you in this letter that your meeting should refrain from using Carlisle United supporters.
I think, Alan, actually, in all fairness, we may be getting weighted down in a bit too much detail here. We're going to have to move on because we do have a number of questions
let me
to answer.
Let me just put more sense, just very quickly. The club herewith distances itself from the CISA, and there should be no doubt in anyone's mind that your complete independence is, in fact, welcomed by everyone at Carlisle United AFC.
Quick response, Michael?
Very quickly, that was a letter written by Albert Dowick, following a very rowdy meeting, two former directors, Peter Fletcher and Steve Patterson, who'd fallen out at a meeting with that organisation, and I understand, especially Mrs. Rowley. So the club inevitably said, look, we've got to be sensible and work together. The two directors involved felt that that particular meeting, as I understand it, was getting out of order. But, you know, for Alan to, again, simply pick that out of the air without giving a lot more background detail is, I think, misleading. I am saying now to everyone, like I said in 1996, so it just hasn't come out of the blue as John Wilson shakes his head, I have said this football club is a community asset. Let's come together in 1996, and I've maintained that all along. They could have owned it, they could have appointed their chairman, they could have appointed the chief executive, they could have owned it and run it in 1996. Why have we all become so hostile in the year 2002?
Well, that quite clearly hasn't happened, Michael Knighton, and just, I mean, very briefly, what future does this football club have under your ownership?
Well, again, you see, because of the massive distortion of a private conversation I had with David Clarke, Lord Clarke of Windermere, and Mike Curry, I can understand why, again, this fallacious campaign of Knighton wants to kill our club came about. Why would I want to kill an investment that I own? Why would I want to close down a club that I've put in more emotional investment, or as much as emotional investment, as anyone living?
So what future does it have?
It has a very difficult future until people come together and talk sensibly. Financially, it's in a dire situation because the whole industry is in a dire situation. I understand a meeting was called in London and Kensington yesterday, and all nationwide league clubs were being advised virtually to seek the advice of professionals of how they can try and manage debt and try and escape from debt. The club will die on its feet whilst ever you've got this newspaper attitude towards the ownership and Qist. You have to work together. It doesn't matter who owns it, frankly.
Okay. Well,
so long as people are working and pulling together.
Okay, well, we'll give Vic Gibson from the News and Star and Alan Steele from Qist another chance to elaborate on that a bit later on. Let's just quickly move on. 01228 592 592, by the way, to the number to ring if you have a question for any of our panellists this afternoon. You're listening to a live football forum here on BBC Radio Cumbria. Let's go back to the phones. Joining us now is Raymond in Kendal. Raymond, good afternoon.
Hello there. Hello.
Your question is to Michael Knighton.
Yeah. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Raymond. How are you?
Hello, Michael. Yeah, fine, thanks. No, I appreciate what you've done for the club in the past. However, looking at last year's results, I just have a feeling that it is time for a change. So if John Courtney was to come up with the money, would you accept without any further problems arising? As I believe that Carlisle supporters deserve a better team than the one that they have at the wrong end of the third division at the moment. That's
Raymond,
my question.
Thank you, Raymond. I would have accepted the deal that Andrew Jenkins and Albert Dowick. I did accept that deal. And it was 2 directors that pulled out of it, not Michael Knighton. Albert will confirm that, so will Andrew.
Yeah.
I shook hands on it, and we were raring to go. Brooks Martin, if Brooks had have turned up with the money, I would have accepted that deal. If John turns up with the money, I will accept that deal. And always, and I've always said, and so as a solicitor of the Supreme Court, something that John Wilson should understand as a lawyer, he came up and his statement was ridiculed by the local paper. It wasn't my statement, it was his statement, because he'd been on the case for 3 months, and he came to say, we've seen no evidence that Mr. Courtney is in a position to complete. I have to say, I believe John Courtney can actually buy Carlisle United. That is my honest view. All we've said is, John, where is the evidence? Can we complete on the deal, because it's dragging on and people are getting frustrated. I have to say, Raymond, we offered copper-bottomed legal warranties on any bits of paper that are outstanding. And this is not a massive commercial deal. Why wasn't it done? Now we've come full circle. I'm getting so frustrated about this hostility and bullying and personalisation of the situation. I am going to review my position if we're not careful, because I will not be shifted. And people should know me by now after 4 years. I'm not going to be seen to be caving because of John Wilson's comments and Alan Steele's comments and the newspaper's comments. I'm just not made that way. If we'd have all had a pint of beer 2.5 years ago and said, look, let's talk, it's not working, I haven't delivered, I'm sorry, we've done our best, it's not for the sake of under-resourcing wages, look at the evidence, I'm sorry, it's not fair, it hasn't worked, what is the way forward?
OK, Raymond, thanks very much for your call. Obviously listening with keen interest in our Dublin studio to what Michael Knighton's just said there is the Irish businessman John Courtney, the man who's been trying to buy Carlisle United since the turn of the year. John, good afternoon. Obviously you've been listening with interest. What have you got to say?
Well, I think a debate like this is absolutely useless unless we're all going to tell the truth. I think I've just heard Mike say that the remarks about the fans and one fan being in the stadium and what he said about the people of Carlisle was a distortion of a conversation he had with David Clock, or Lord Clock, and Mike Curry. Michael must be having a bout of amnesia, because if he remembers in Lincoln when Roddy and I met him in the hotel about 2 minutes away from the ground, on the day when Roddy had resigned and then came back, Michael said at least that and a lot more about the fans, and he said he wouldn't care if it turned into a pigsty, right? So,
John, don't lecture me about telling the truth. You said that day you were going to pay off a PFA loan on the following Monday. You never did. What I did say,
okay,
John,
okay,
what I did say,
Michael,
John,
I'm not interrupting you.
Yes.
You're interrupting me.
Okay.
So just wait. I gave Roddy the cheque for the PFA loan, and he was prepared to hand it to Mark on condition that he could sign a player. Mark said, no, you can pay the PFA loan, but we're not taking on any more staff. And that was in spite of the fact that several players had been released or were out on loan. And Roddy wouldn't give him the cheque, not me, but Roddy wouldn't give him the cheque for the simple reason that Michael was not going to allow him to bring in any players. So, or Mark wasn't going to allow him. So why would he give him the cheque? Why should I pay your bill if it's not to our benefit?
John, that's all I can say is that isn't the message I received, but we're never going to agree on that, John. But you say about the meeting...
Sorry, Michael, what are we not going to agree on?
We're never going to agree on a private conversation between Roddy and Mark. We're both going to take diametrically opposite
Can we
views.
agree that several people, including a reporter from the News and Star, Anthony Ferguson, saw the cheque, so did Mike Curry, so did other people, a bank draft made out, an irrevocable bank draft made out to the PFA.
Well, seeing is one thing, but delivering it and securing on your promise is another.
Why should we pay it in
because
if you
you
want
offer to, John? Because you offer to do
on
that.
On condition we could get players.
Well,
that
you
was the
didn't
whole
make
idea.
that condition in Lincoln. I was summoned to Lincoln, John. I was summoned by yourself to that meeting. If you recall, I was summoned to Lincoln. I got in my car and came. It was a meeting that didn't last even 15 minutes. Roddy Collins was particularly unhelpful with his attitude, didn't even want to shake hands, everything we've heard about Roddy came out in that meeting.
And how did you behave at that meeting?
I certainly responded to Roddy Collins with the same degree of courtesy that he was providing for myself. I don't deny that for a minute.
I mean, your eloquence is admirable, but I mean, reality is that you were having a good go at Roddy and he was having a good go at you. And the issue was, you did say that you didn't give a friggin' damn about the people in Carlisle. Look, that's not what I'm on here for anyway. I'm just making the point that you're saying your conversation.
I don't recall saying that.
You said at Lord Clark...
Let's well, we're losing our line from Dublin now, actually. Let's just try and keep things a bit quieter for the time being. Look, the question that everybody's wanting to ask, everybody who's sitting listening to this at home or wherever in their cars, can you, this is a question to you, Michael, can you and John Courtney do a deal?
Well, I have to is this microphone still on, Paul?
Yeah.
I have to say that, you know, I've just heard yet again an astonishing account of certain events which I do find puzzling and bizarre. At the end of the day, this is not ICI that John is trying to buy. It's a third division football club. You know, he knows what the liabilities are. He knows what bits of paper that he claims to still need. If John wants to do that deal, it was there to be done. Lawyers confirmed that and will confirm it. You know, it's no good asking me. You know, why not ask the independent professionals involved? They will confirm what I'm saying. The point is, if John can do this deal, and I'm sure he can, I'm just puzzled as to why he hasn't done it. That is a genuine statement.
So you're saying the deal is still open for John Courtney? That's what you're saying now?
The deal is only open if John delivers what we've been asking him to deliver.
John, over to you.
Very simply, Michael and I had a deal, and he knows what the deal was. If you're selling, let's take a hypothetical situation. If you're selling a business, and the business obviously has liabilities and whatever, when you get the money for the business, whatever goes to cover the liabilities goes there, and the balance is for the seller. The difficulty was that when we did due diligence, our opinion of how much was owed by the club was a great deal higher than Michael had estimated, and so therefore the profit for the seller was greatly eaten into by the extra debts.
John, did I not?
Well, Michael, do you have to interrupt every time you
Sorry,
speak?
I apologise. I thought you finished.
Every time we required documentation, it took us 4 to 5 weeks to get documentation. At the end, we were left in a situation where we still did not receive the management accounts up to the end of February, which we had been promised for 6 weeks. Michael rang me at the last minute. He knew I wasn't happy that the liabilities were higher, and I knew that wasn't going to suit him.
John, with respect, this is what's happened. But
I want to tell you exactly what happened, where we are at the moment, because what happened brought us to where we are. And I'm not going to labour the point too long. I just want to make this bit. The issue was that Michael rang me and said, spoke about one particular item, and I said, fine, I'd try and get into my solicitor. And when I couldn't, he had a press conference and said that I didn't produce the money. He had never, ever asked me to produce the money.
Can I just respond very quickly? On the 9th of April at 11:35 a.m., my solicitor dialed John's number and gave the phone to me. In front of my solicitor, I said to John, we've received your letter out of the blue from Dillon's in Ireland, because we were getting very frustrated. We were having no responses all of a sudden for about 2 weeks. And John knows that because he was in Portugal when I was desperately trying to make contact with him. And I said in that conversation, witnessed by a lawyer, I said, I concede your every point. That is what I said. If your final letter delivered to the officers of my lawyers on Friday, I said, I concede your every point. Can you please now TT into escrow, which is a legal account.
That is an absolute lie.
Well, the lawyers
now, Michael, look, I still think we could possibly do a deal, but not that you've been lying from day one. This is a lie. This is a blatant lie. I'm not prepared to let you say that to me.
Look, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll leave this theme for the time being. We'll continue it in a moment. Questions we've had over the past few days. This one's to John Courtney, who's in our Dublin studio this afternoon. John, this is from Mike. Not quite sure where Mike's from, but anyway, this is from Mike. John, were you aware that a couple of years ago, Michael Knighton offered to sell his controlling interest in Carlisle United to local businesses, including the Cumberland newspaper group and Border Television, for £1?
I've heard rumours to that effect, but I've no idea, and it wouldn't be very relevant for me. But I have heard rumours to that effect, yeah. I don't think it's going for £1 now, though.
Is it going for £1, Michael Knighton?
Not to John Courtney, no.
Is it going to John Courtney for any price?
Well, that's up to John. I can't make that decision, as I said. I mean, I you know, the more time I listen to John, you know, and John, you must understand why I've got to take exception to your last comments. All I can say is Joe Glass heard the conversation I was just referring to. I've just invited the local press to ring a solicitor of the Supreme Court, a senior partner in a very big practice, who actually witnessed the conversation. He's refused to. He said because...
Michael.
Hang on. The newspaper man has refused to ring the lawyer. John Wilson might, because he's more sensible and is a lawyer himself. John, we've got to stop bickering.
I agree entirely.
the finger.
I agree entirely, but you've also got to stop moving the goalposts. Let me tell you, I'll tell you exactly where I'm up to at the football club, okay? The reality of it is that in January, when I made the offer, which you agreed to, right, the football club was in a different situation than it is now, and there were about 7 or 8 home games left, which we would have got far greater gates at. I think even you will agree to that if you were gone, more people would go to the football games. Lots of things have happened. The TV money is gone. The liabilities in the club are gone. Football in general in the lower divisions is in turmoil. I would agree with your earlier comments on that. So the value of the football club is not now in May what it was in January. But if you're interested, I will make you another offer, clear offer. But it won't be the same offer as it was the last time. It will be quite a deal less.
John, my lawyers wrote to your lawyers more than 3 weeks ago saying, what is your final offer then?
Exactly, Michael, but...
And we've not had one.
John, are you saying you're making an offer to Michael Knighton now? Obviously, you're not going to reveal the details on there, but
I am quite prepared to make a written offer to him on Monday morning, right? An offer, but it will be in line with the state of the club now, not in January.
John, I just repeat, my lawyers wrote to your lawyers 3 or 4 weeks ago saying, OK, we've received your facts, could we now have your revised offer? We've never received it.
No, you didn't receive it because, Michael, our belief at the time, and to a great degree, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt now, we at that point didn't believe you were trying to sell the football club.
Well, John, why would I spend the sort of money, and you know, I hope you're going to acknowledge this. You have seen the strong professional team that I appointed. You know, Baker Tilly's accountants, in conjunction with Deloitte Touche, and Waxcore, a huge practice down in Manchester. Those people don't come cheaply. I've had them on this case for nearly 4 months on a daily basis. Why on earth would I go to that time and trouble if there wasn't a genuine deal to be had?
Michael, that's the
question we ask among ourselves all the time. We have no idea why you do what you do.
Michael, the issue is, if John Courtney is saying he will put in a new bid, a revised bid for that football club on Monday, will you take that bid seriously, or will it be just dismissed?
Every bid for the football club is taken seriously. John Courtney would be no different. We've asked him to put a revised bid in 4 weeks ago. We're waiting for it.
Right, let's get the... John, if you can just bear with us for a second. Let's get the thoughts in of our other panellists this afternoon. Vic Gibson, news editor of the News and Star newspaper. If I can come to you first, what's your feelings on what you've just heard?
Well, I am encouraged that John is still involved and interested in buying the club, although having heard how the negotiations have gone so far, it's been very revealing what's been said in the last 10 or 15 minutes about the different personalities involved. So on the one hand, I'm encouraged, but I think that encouragement will probably disappear by Monday lunchtime, because we've had the previous board of directors, we've had Brooks Milson, and we've had John himself, all with a genuine desire, I believe, to buy the club, and all with the financial capacity to do so. But the stumbling block every time appears to me to be Michael Knighton, and I don't see any way that John Courtney is going to conclude a deal with Michael Knighton. OK, let's ask the same question to QS member John Wilson, who also joins us, sitting alongside Vic.
Hello there, Paul. It's difficult to know where to start, isn't it? I agree with Vic. It's great to hear John is still involved. I met Michael Knighton for the first time properly this afternoon. I have to say I am extremely sceptical that Michael does want to sell the club to John. I did ask him before we came on air whether he did want to sell the club. He said he wanted to sell the club, his club that he owns. He said, I disagreed with that, to the right people or person. I can't remember whether it's plural or singular. Whether John is that person, I don't know. I desperately hope it is. I personally cannot believe, after everything that has happened, that Michael and John will be able to conclude a transaction. They would be the biggest party that Cumbria's ever seen if they could, and it would be fantastic if they could. Most of the Carlisle fans that I know are amazed that John Courtney is still involved in this process after everything that has happened. I understand what Michael says, that on the face of it, as John has done as well, they've both probably incurred collectively, I would have thought, assuming everything's been charged out at normal rates, and I do this for a job so I've got a fair idea, I would have thought collectively between them, between January, they've spent probably in excess, certainly of quarter of a million, maybe in excess of £300,000 potentially in terms of professional fees. Michael is right. Why on earth would you do that if you didn't intend to sell the club? I'm with John on this. I really have no idea why you would.
Okay, let's...
We're all incredibly confused as to what Michael's plans are. None of us have a clue, really, what he's trying to do. He says he has the best interest of the club at heart, 1 minute. Then he says it's his club, and he'll do whatever the hell he likes. We're confused. We're very, very, very confused.
John, let's answer that question of Michael Knighton. What are your plans for the football club?
The reason they don't know is because they've refused to talk to me from day one. That's why they don't know. That's why they're confused. As I say, John's had a road to Damascus conversion on this, because if John had ever picked the phone up, he's a professional person. If he'd have picked the phone up to me and said, Michael, this is my view, let's get round a table and talk sensibly, a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have done so, and he would know where I'm coming from. What we can't have here is this, let me just very briefly, and I'll be as quick as possible. There is the Supporters Direct movement. It's government funded. It's a very good movement. It's the right movement. Brian Lomax is the leading light. He is, in fact, the managing director now. He's full-time. He was the chairman. If you read all their literature, and I have done so, you will see this hidden tenet, really, of, bit of hostility here, bit of pressure group here, it works. Now, they have been the longest established group at Northampton Town. That's his club. He was a direct from 1992 to 1999. Now, let me tell you this. They did a fantastic job when they were there in the early years. Brian was elected as a fans representative. 10 years on, Northampton Town... I've just got 10 registered players, 6 less than Carlisle. They've got a PFA loan embargo since October. They have got headlines in the local newspaper, Trust refuses to sell shares. They are up for sale. They, in fact, were knocked out of the cup by a non-league club last year. And yet, they are held up as the leading light of Supporters Direct, and Qist has come out of this, be absolutely certain, Qist has come out of this movement. So 10 years on, they are in precisely the same position as a private owner. I had a call from Gary Hodder, their chief executive,
very quickly,
4 weeks ago,
very quickly,
just 4 weeks ago, and he said, Michael, we're in desperate trouble. We could close down if we're not careful. Can you give me some advice? And I tried to give him some advice.
Okay, Michael.
And that's Northampton Supporters
Let's move on, because we've got a mountain of questions to get through. Emails that are coming in. This one's from Andrew Ashbridge. He says, I'm a non-confrontational fan. I only care about the future of the club. I'm not interested in humiliating Michael Knighton. So will you sell the club to me for £1?
I would certainly sell him the club for £1 if he could demonstrate that he was prepared to complete the stadium and take it forward, and that he had the resources to take the club where I'd always hoped I could, definitely. Okay,
let's get back to the phones then. Brian in Carlisle's joining us. Brian, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Your question to Michael Knighton.
Thank you. Mr. Knighton, I'd just like to know, actually, if you're prepared to give your shares away, as you originally quoted to a charity, then why can't you sell or give them away to Mr. Courtney or Mr. Milson or the old board or whoever?
It's very simple. That is my prerogative. And what I choose to do with my shares is my business. Even John Wilson will admit that. The destiny of those shares is my business. And why should I cave in to two groups of adversaries, which is Qist and the local newspaper? Vic Gibson has been particularly hostile to me this afternoon, particularly aggressive and unhelpful. He's a responsible journalist, or should be. And his newspaper...
Let's just bring Vic on this one then for the moment. Vic Gibson, obviously you're listening to this. Does your paper have a vendetta against Michael Knighton, as he claims?
No, what we have is a campaign to bring in new ownership and make it quite clear that whilst we do not have a campaign against Michael Knighton per se, we have a campaign against the current ownership of the club, who happens to be Michael Knighton. There's quite a distinction there, and Michael refuses to accept that. Just a couple of points, if I can have my say on what is really turning into the Michael Knighton show, is that Michael says that he would choose to sell his shares to whoever he chooses, and that is where the problem lies, that the people want him to sell his shares to whoever. They don't really care who he says sells his shares to. And for the last 3 years, we've had rhetoric and nothing else. And we are no nearer Michael Knighton selling his shares now than we were 3 years ago. And that is why people are angry. And that is why he is the most unpopular man in Cumbria. more unpopular than foot and mouth in Cumbria, and that is why people are laying banners out across the city and sticking them up in the windows in their cars, not because of the News and Star, but because they dislike Michael Knighton's regime at Brunton Park intensely.
John Wilson from Cewist, Michael Knighton has stated on many occasions that your organisation is antagonistic towards a club and he doesn't want to have any involvement with you. Do you accept any personal responsibility in Cewist's perceived failure?
No. When the Cewist organisation has been going, let's put this into perspective, for almost a year to the day, really, a year and a month or so. It was founded in the White Y between here and Penrith. Alan and myself had spoken on the phone. We were introduced by somebody that had the interests of the supporters and said that we should meet up. We met up with two other long-standing supporters, Brian Hall and Kate Rowley. We took soundings. We thought that it was a very difficult time for the club. It was very difficult to see a sensible way forward, but we felt that the time had come where there had to be a supporters group, a serious supporters group, not a supporters as in let's go to the away match or organise a trip, a supporters entity which could play a part, not the part, a part in the running of the club, representing the community both on individual and on business levels with the entity which is known as Carlisle United. Now, we've been going for over a year. We had a huge groundswell of support right from the beginning, whether Michael likes it or not. The simple fact of the matter was, as Alan and I don't agree on everything, far from it, but the one thing we do agree on is that it was made incredibly clear to us at day one. I was actually, I mean, I've got my own views as to what Michael's done to the club, but I was constantly amazed at the reaction of people and what they said to us at the time. Became abundantly apparent that if we were connected in any way with Michael Knighton, the organisation that we wanted to form would not have got off the ground. And we even had to go to the nth degree in writing our constitution to make it clear as to what the share fund monies could be used.
But John, you're having no success as the way it is. Is it too late for reconciliation?
Well, listen, I've asked Michael this afternoon what his plan is. He says that he will sell the club to the right people. I mean, Vic, there's no point going over. We've all heard it before. We know how many people have been interested in buying the club. Michael, no doubt, will sell the club if it continues in existence, which may be in some great doubt, I would have thought. But if the club does continue, at some point, if he can get the right deal, he's implying he will sell. I don't know in terms of reconciliation. We haven't. We are not in control of the situation. I don't know whether you know where Michael is. All we want is for the football club to be put on a status quo position where we can all actually go along and watch a reasonable football team. We don't want to be. We haven't got any unrealistic ambitions. We just want to go and watch a game of football on a Saturday afternoon, and we want the community and the local business community to be involved with this football club. It is now a virtual football club, Paul, and it's ridiculous, to be perfectly frank, where it's come to. And Michael is in a hole, and I wish he'd stop digging.
My family would love to go and watch the football club as well, but they can't because of the vitriol and the vindictiveness and the pure, I have to say, threats of violence. That there's a strong correlation whenever there is a bad piece in the press. My son gets threatened to be glassed.
Why not take your family away from all this then, Michael? Why not sell up and go?
It's very simple. You see, in other words, cave into those sort of tactics, which we are not going to do. If John and Alan had have come...
We are responsible. We're responsible people. We have responsible jobs. We are not... None of us are violent people. None of us have ever threatened any violence, and none of us ever will.
So there
may be one or two people.
Right, we're going to have to move on. I'm sorry, we're going to have to go to the questions that are coming on an email. This is going to John Courtney, who's sitting very patiently in our studio in Dublin. This one's from Trevor Wilson in Penrith. John, if you are unsuccessful in securing your ownership of Carlisle United, and if the club should plummet into obscurity or fold completely, would you consider investing in a rival scratch club or a different scratch club with the aim of rising through the lower leagues? And would that be Carlisle United, perhaps?
I don't think that's very likely. I think everybody knows my involvement with the club stemmed from Ruddy Collins, or through Ruddy Collins. And my idea in Carlisle would be to have Ruddy reinstated. I think if that happened, by the time it would happen, Ruddy would have long gone somewhere else. You would just look at it in its own right, but it wouldn't be a contingency plan.
What is the situation with Ruddy Collins then?
He has had several people have been in touch with him about jobs, but he hasn't actually agreed anything yet. And if I said to Roddy I really believed there was a deal going to happen, he would continue to wait. I mean, he's been very fair about it, and also his coaches. The aspect about that is that obviously he's not on a salary like many other people at Carlisle. He was sacked on very spurious grounds. I thought the main object as a football manager was to be successful, and given his circumstances, I thought he was extremely successful.
You should tell the Stoke City board that, John.
Sorry, Michael?
You should tell the Stoke City board the same sentence as you've just told the directors of the club. They've just sacked their manager. Just got promotion to the English First Division. They sacked him because he was undermining the management of the club, John.
Okay.
Michael, I would have no idea why the board of Stoke sacked him, no more than people outside the club know why you sacked Roddy.
I didn't sack him.
Mark sacked Roddy.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. There's another caller on the line now. It's Ian in Penrith. Ian, good afternoon.
Hiya.
Your question is to who?
It's to everybody, actually, and well, I hope it's a solution. A solution that I think requires a bit of honesty from all parties. First of all, I'd like to say to Michael, it appears from my point, I think from a lot of fans, that under the current situation, I don't think you really want to sell the club. I think you probably want to hang on to the ground and develop it. I think a lot of people would agree with that. However, on the back of that, I can't also see why you would want to hang on to the club when really it's going to be losing a lot of money and it's going to cause you a lot of distress.
Do you want to sell, Michael?
That's a very, very good question. Thanks very much, Ian.
Can I go on with the rest of the statement, Michael, because it all ties in if I can.
Yeah, no problem.
Just to say to John Courtney, John has always said that his interest is in the football club only, and obviously he wants to develop the football club and its success. Carlisle City Council and Cumbria County Council have all given their backing to the club. Cumbria County Council have given some money to Cuist, and they've said they want a Football League club in Cumbria. Therefore, would a practical decision be for a buyer to come along and buy the good name of Carlisle United from yourself, thus solving your current short-term financial problems, then to rent Brunton Park next season and play there, thereafter, with the City Council, the person who was buying, build a new stadium somewhere in the city, have it ready for the end of next season, move into that new stadium, leaving you, of course, with Brunton Park if you ever needed to develop it, which I suspect you may want to do so. So at the end of the day, everybody is happy. Michael Knighton gets his land, gets his short-term financial situation secured. Mr. Courtney gets the club for, say, maybe $2.5 million if we're building a Chester-type stadium which can be developed. Cuist get a Knighton-free zone. Carlisle City Council, Cumbria County Council get a Football League club, and the fans are happy.
Okay, is that a question to John Courtney or to Michael Knighton or to both? Okay, well, let's hear from John Courtney first. Does that sound far-fetched?
I think there'd be a lot of work in putting something like that together, but I think, yeah, there's a possibility in doing that. The only thing I would say is that the ground at Carlisle, I'm told, Brunton Park, has some kind of a covenant, and it cannot be used for anything other than sports or recreational facilities.
Is that right, Michael Knighton?
No, that's not right at all. There is a covenant on the rugby ground next door, which always must be sport-related, John, in fact. There is a general covenant on all football clubs nowadays, which really, covenant's the wrong word, John would probably get the right word. There are some restrictions under Football Association rules about football clubs.
Okay,
I'm quoting from Mike Curry from Cuist, who is a chartered accountant, told me that there's a covenant on the ground.
There are no covenants, John. Your own lawyers have done due diligence on the legal title. There's no covenants on the
If there's no covenant then, Michael, is there a chance you could turn Carlisle United into a supermarket?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to turn it into a supermarket. Crikey. I mean, why would you build a £3.5 million stand if you're going to put a supermarket on it? The evidence belies that.
But there's a football club operating in the sort of broader sense of the term at the moment. It's just a shell, isn't it?
Sorry, Paul, I'm not with you.
Well, the question is, what are you gaining from holding on at Carlisle United? It's a club that's...
this is it, you see. I'm not in to gain anything. What I'm trying to do here, and I've always tried to do, if people are fair-minded with Michael Knighton, they will receive fair treatment. I repeat, if John Wilson and Alan Steele, despite, I can't believe two strong-minded, intelligent people would be bullied by school background politics of don't deal with him or we'll run away. They're too intelligent for that. They'd have said, hey, hang on, we want to get the ownership around the table to see if we can make progress.
Paul,
I believe
Paul,
they would have done.
Can I just come in there and just make a few things clear?
Okay, Alan Steele from QS.
I haven't spoken for a while. First of all, as John has just intimated, we wouldn't get a penny from anyone without a change in ownership in the club. Secondly, given the level of debt of the club, which I understand is between £2 and £3 million, we couldn't handle that sort of debt and provide enough money ourselves to take the club forward. We are prepared to contribute large amounts of money on an annual basis to the running of the football club, and I guess that would make the football club a very saleable proposition with us in the wings. Given the situation and the lack of credibility for the current owners, we could not. It would be futile for us to sit down with the current owners. First of all, we haven't got the funds to buy it, and secondly, it's written into our constitution that we can't have our funds end up in that pocket, as it were. So those two things are clear. If buyers could be found for the club, then we would sit down with those buyers and introduce our funds into the club on a controlled basis in return for a shareholding, and the supporters themselves would elect a director to the board, and that would prevent any of this sort of nonsense ever happening ever again. And I would add that none of the people involved in QS have anything as individuals to gain from this. None of us get paid. We all put our effort in for absolutely nothing. And I've got to say that we are one of the most successful organisations of this sort in the country, and something Carlisle can be proud of.
Okay, QS can't purchase the football club, but John Courtney can, who's in our Dublin studio. John, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just think with Michael, I'm concerned that the show is just being dominated by Michael's eloquence. Every time he gets a question, he takes a long time to answer, and then he makes statements which, by the time he's finished speaking, you can't get the challenge. For instance, he said, anybody who deals with Michael Knighton and who deals fairly will get fairness in return. Now, I would know a lot of people who would disagree with that. But how do you judge that? What in Michael's eyes is fair? It depends from one thing to another, but it sounds very good. Like, I'm a very fair guy. If you're fair with me, I'm fair with you. That statement doesn't really mean anything. I just want to point out that if we stuck to facts and said, OK, well, A did B and I did C, and that was fine. But if we stick with facts, not Michael's eloquence, it's overriding the whole thing.
Michael, sticking with facts?
I apologise for being eloquent, but the point is this. I stick to facts. I wish people would stick to facts. Alan Steele's just said that people in QS won't deal with Michael Knight. Not true. I've had meetings with Mike Corrie. I've had meetings with Lord Windermere. Excellent meetings, positive. They've told me off the record there are a lot of people in QS very unhappy with Alan Steele's spokesmanship. Very unhappy. I'll put this question to you, Alan. You're laughing. Have you ever been challenged by anyone in your organisation about this confrontational approach as opposed to a more amenable, sensible, grown-up approach? Have you ever been challenged, yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, you say the approach doesn't spring from the board of QS. The approach springs from the supporters. They've had 3 or 4 years of almost losing their football league status. If we were to leave open the possibility that some of the funds which we've gathered together would end up with the current owners of the club, then we wouldn't have any funds. It's as simple as that.
I'm saying this to any QS member out there. Please join Mark Knighton and his plan to take that club into the future. He's had dozens and dozens of people come forward, police officers, civil servants, solicitors, accountants, who said, we've never been members of QIST, we understand where they're coming from, their approach has been wrong, can we speak to your father? I agreed straight away. I have met some of those people. They are excellent people. They will go onto the board of that football club with Mark's, with the director's nomination, I'm sure, but I'll tell you as the owner, they would have my full backing for certain. Okay. I don't care if 10 supporters are on there. They're sensible. They haven't got an axe to grind. They haven't personalised it. They love the club, and they've got my support, and they can have the power that these individuals so crave for themselves.
And this one's from Catherine Mitchell. I'm not quite sure where she is from. If the club doesn't resign out of the Football League, what happens after relegation?
Well, to my knowledge, it's not resigning out of the Football League. It hasn't applied to resign out of the Football League. And who says the club's going to be relegated? If you remember, at the start of last season, if the questioner could remember, there was a campaign which said, under Knighton's ownership, with the current directors, they will definitely get relegated. Of course, by Christmas, for the first time, they were just about safe. It suddenly changed to the Knighton family now must definitely be kicked out because whatever happens, the club is going to die. Eric Martel, who went public at the beginning of the season, said it's bound to get relegated. Alan Steele said it's bound to get relegated. Everyone said it's bound to get relegated. We finished in our best position for about 4 or 5 years, and suddenly the emphasis changes, which just demonstrates, you see, it is personal.
Okay, another question, yes or no answer. Will your wife Rosemary be returning to the board when her DTI ban expires? I think that expires in September, doesn't it?
You need to ask Rosemary. I've never discussed it.
Another question, who was behind the Mamcar deal? That's from Mark Robertson.
I've just been asked that off the when you were doing the news, and I said to Alan Steele, I do not own Mamcar.
A question from, who are Mamcar? Quite simply.
Mamcar were well publicised, who they were, based in Gibraltar. Yes, they were. The news has started a full expose upon them, and the people that organise them and run them.
Okay, question from John in Blackpool. If the club is so hard up of money, why do we consistently undersell players such as Scott Dobie, and why do we bother with ventures such as the purchase of spa shops?
Well, again, I can't speak for directors, but what I will say is this, that every football club that is struggling to provide funding for its future has diversified into other interests. The very top clubs have done it, even smaller clubs are doing it. When I've discussed that concept with David Clark, the chairman of QIST, he has wholeheartedly supported that concept. Well, at least to me, he certainly has. What position is he, Alan?
He's a co-opted board member.
He's a co-opted board member. David thought it was an excellent strategy. But I think, to be honest, my understanding of the Spa Spare Shop, which I have to tell you, I knew nothing about till it was just about complete, was a strategic purchase.
Would
I understand that.
But then, therefore, would it not make sense to sell properties rather than sell the club's main assets, which I gather is their players?
Well, again, that is a decision for the management of the football club. You know, you've got to always think of the big picture. Scott Dobie, I've always believed, was a top player, always.
But £150,000 doesn't mean that, does it?
Absolutely right. And had we not had this ridiculous campaign about not buying season tickets last summer and people being persuaded not to buy things from the shop and so on, Scott Dobie would have gone for a lot more money. It's as simple as that.
Do you honestly believe that, Michael?
Yes, I do. I really do. We shouldn't have sold Scott Dobie. There's no question about that, for that sort of money. But what do? You can't run a club on fresh air in the close season.
Okay.
As all clubs are finding out this year.
Okay, John Courtney, who's in our Dublin studio. Some questions for you coming in, John. Obviously, when you first entered into talks with Michael Knighton, the deal went public very, very quickly. You went public very quickly on that deal. Do you regret that now? Do you think it brought about undue pressure on the talks between yourself and Michael Knighton?
No, the reason we did that was strategic. We knew that there had been several other deals beforehand that had gone pear-shaped, and we felt there was probably a stronger likelihood of Michael going for the deal if he was already committed in public.
Okay, another question then. This one's from Richard Percival. Do you still envisage that at some point in the future you still could be the next owner of Carlisle United?
Yes.
Simple as that?
Yep.
Michael Knighton, can you envisage John Courtney being the future owner of Carlisle United?
That's absolutely down to John.
John?
I'm not going to get into the issue here. I mean, it's pointless to drag the story around, but I mean, Michael said earlier that the directors of the club had done the best for the club, but I mean, and he was talking about how everybody said last year they would be relegated and then they weren't. But in reality, what did the directors do for the club? Apart from appoint Roddy Collins, who then went and did everything else. He got no new players, he got no help, he got virtually no facilities and backup. But what he did get was one player, Richie Foran, and as you were well aware, the money hasn't even been paid for Richie Foran. Other than that, nobody. And he worked a team of kids, and I think he did an almost miraculous job with it. But for the directors now, for Michael to claim credit on behalf of the directors seems a bit absurd to me.
I'm not claiming any credit. The wage bill is the factual information that you need to look to say that those directors supported Roddy Collins to the tune of £1 million in player wages. That is a very substantial sum of money. It's not all just about managers. And I have to say, John, even Roddy Collins himself, despite all that's gone on, congratulated my son and said, "We get on very well. I hope I keep him as a friend." That shows you the degree of cooperation that my son gave to Roddy Collins. Roddy Collins, in my view, if he'd have just been able to control himself more, would still be the manager of that football club.
Roddy Collins seemed to have a lot to say still about you, though, Michael, and for somebody banned by the DTI from having any involvement with a football club, you do seem to have rather a lot to say, and other people have a lot to say.
Well, you see, again, that's because the News and Star has told you that I can have nothing to do with that football club. That is nonsense. I could actually be an employee of that football club if I so choose. I could be a consultant this afternoon. That is a fact. It's only because people have been fed this diet that I can have nothing to do with that football club. That is not true.
Okay.
Categorically not true. In fact, I could take a post this afternoon. What is more, I could actually apply to be a non-executive director. That is absolutely the case.
Okay.
It's only because the newspaper, and I'm sitting next to the man that's published, I think, more than 55 times in his newspaper, that I cannot have anything to do with the club. It's a lie.
Okay.
It's misinformation, and he should be reported to the press complaints for misinforming the general public.
Vic Gibson,
on a point of
Vic
order
Gibson
there,
from the News and Star.
That is more nonsense from Michael Martin. What we have said in the paper is he is disqualified from being the director, which is a fact. If it wasn't a fact, Michael Knighton would have sued the pants off us. He's disqualified from being director of any company, never mind Carlisle United, and that is the end of it. That's all we put in the paper, factually correct.
No, you don't. That is not correct. Again, another lie from yourself, and your editor often tells lies in writing, which I have in my briefcase.
That's your opinion, Michael,
It is my
obviously,
opinion.
and that's
It is my opinion.
of
I
the
hope
radio
he's listening,
station.
and I hope he sues me for that statement if it's not true.
Well, look, if we're talking about facts, the back page of your newspaper today, Vic, Carlisle United made a profit of £145,000 last year, according to latest accounts via that company's house.
Yes, I was surprised to see that, but glad to hear it, because the club does need to stay afloat financially. Clearly, the figures are boosted by this continued sale of players. But I'm afraid that the financial position of the club, it still has massive debts, and we go into another season with nothing but doom and gloom on the horizon, with Michael Knighton still in ownership of the club.
Michael Knighton is not going to cave in to Vic Gibson, Keith Sutton, Julian Whittle, et al. At that newspaper. I don't know when they're going to get that message. They are fed I only hope and pray to God that the way they've reported the off-field affairs of Carlisle United is not the way they report other stories. One day, I make this prediction, and I can guarantee their whole role in the views of the Carlisle fan public about who support that club, their role will be exposed. Their misinformation, their construed stories will be absolutely there, laid bare for people to see.
Vic Gibson, a quick
response. An absolute scandal.
A quick response on behalf of your newspaper to these claims.
I look forward to that day when Michael does that. We stand by everything we've written, and these aren't aliens who put up these posters around the town. These are real people who want you to go, Michael.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the phones. Joining us on the line is Phil in Carlisle. Phil, good afternoon. No, we can't go to Phil. Let's move on with another question, and let's to Michael Knighton again. This is from Paul.
Can I just say so? I'm sorry for laughing, I am taking the discussion very seriously. But when Vic is animated with his semi-permed hair and his crooked grin and smirk, he looks exactly a ringer for Stan Boardman. The difference is that Stan Boardman is paid to be a comic and tells jokes. Vic just tells jokes which are not funny.
Right.
So,
let's get back to the issue. Let's get back to the issues we're here to talk about. Let's go to the phones. Ian in Whitehaven. Ian, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello, Ian.
I'd like to put a question to Michael, please.
Hi.
Michael, is it true that you said Carlisle didn't deserve a football club? And if so, could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, the point is this. I never actually said Carlisle did not deserve a football club. What I said, and you're referring now to a conversation I had with Mike Curry, who is involved with Curious, as you know, reasonable guy, Mike. David Clark, very reasonable, very sensible, eminently sensible. My conversation with those two individuals said this. The activities of the News and Star, headed up by Vic Gibson and Keith Sutton and Nick Turner, and the activities of Qist have and are destroying the football club. That was the conversation I had. The News and Star then twisted that to say Knighton is going to kill
Michael, I think we've probably heard enough about enough about the News and Star. Let's hear from John Courtney a second.
Just, all I can say, and Alan Steele should be able to answer this. I have heard from both Lord Clark and from Mike Curry that what that lad has said on the phone, I've heard those words from them. Now, Michael, they're not here, and Michael is saying that's not what he said to them. But in reality, both of those people have said to me that Michael said that.
What is true, John, what is absolutely true, we said, if we're not very careful, the club will be in a perilous situation and will be destroyed. That was said.
That's not what they said to me. They said that you said that the people in Carlisle do not deserve a football club. And Michael, I'm not trying to have a go here, right? But reality is you did say those. I wasn't shocked because you said those very words to me in Lincoln, in the hotel. You said, look, I'm sick and tired. I don't give a about the people in Carlisle or anybody else. And if a push comes to shove, we'll close the doors and I'll see grass growing on our mark and turn it into a pig farm. Now, you did say that.
I was absolutely referring to Quist.
No, you were Quist had nothing to do with the conversation.
Listen, John, I've been
to go at you, but what I'm saying, Michael, Michael, hold on, you're overriding everybody. Just wait for a second. I'm not trying to have a go on you. It doesn't suit me if I'm going to try and do a deal with you to really have a go. What I'm trying to say to you is, if we're going to have the conversation, stick with the facts and be honest. John, now, you did make that statement to me, and
John,
you made the statement that you're washing around it.
John, if I can come back to you and say this. I do not have an argument with the good people of Carlisle. I just don't. I have been at that club for 10 years. We've had some of our most memorable times together. I don't have an argument with them. I've got a lot of friends in Carlisle. I have said I will fight Quist and the News and Star to the death now. That's what I said.
Michael, you're moving the goalpost again. Hold on, stop it for a minute. This is ridiculous.
Come on, John, you know what I said.
I'm sitting there with Roddy and you in the hotel, and the two of you are up to 90. I'm waiting for to see who's going to swipe at each other first, right? And you said, I don't give a about Carlisle and the whole lot of it, and I'll close down the gates. Mark will close the gates. We'll see weeds growing on the place, or we'll turn into a pig farm. Well,
John, we're never going to agree.
I also applied the same hesitation.
John, we're never going to agree.
Yeah, but you did say it. You did say it.
You and I...
This conversation can't go on. You're going to move the goalpost.
John, you and I have had many a ding-dong in good spirit, because we're both similar individuals. But you and I know whatever was said at that meeting could never be construed as a sensible statement on either side.
I would say for a lot of things were said in the heat of the moment that day. There's no argument. But David Clark and Mike Corrie have both said the same thing to me, that you said that to them. Okay. And now you're saying to this lad you didn't say it.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Let's just leave it. Let's just go back to Ian in Whitehaven, whose question it originally was. Ian, what you're making from what you hear?
Well, I think that as the programme sort of goes on, I'm just becoming more confused anyway, and I don't think I'm the only one, really.
OK, well, let's hear from Alan Steele, Secretary at QS, because we haven't heard from Alan for a while now. Alan, are you confused?
I think the situation is very clear as far as we're concerned. The club needs a new owner. Whatever Michael says, whatever we say, the people won't go through the gates without a new owner of the club. Now, that's not a threat.
No, you won't go through the gates.
About probably 80-90% of the potential support for Carlisle won't go through gates, and the local businesses won't put their money in. Rickaby's just pulled out this week. Now, that's the reality. That's not a threat. It's not the way I want the situation to be. It's nothing personal against Mr. Knighton. That's the way the situation is. Now, that's got to change for the football club to survive and thrive and do well. Potentially, it should be a first division side. It draws on a fan base of about 500,000. There should be 10, 11, 12,000 people there every week. It should be in the first division. That's where Carlisle United should be. Now, it's never going to be there, whether I like that or whether Michael Knighton likes that or anybody else likes that. That's the way the situation is. Now, in those terms, it seems to me that two very able businessmen, very wealthy men, have made honest and genuine attempts to buy the club. One guy spent 150,000 last year. Another guy spent 50,000 just on the due diligence. Now, there's no way they're gonna invest those sorts of money if they aren't serious bidders. What's crossing my mind now is whether John has just said his bid is going to reduce next week, so it's going to get the response which a reduced bid would normally elicit. What's going through my mind is there are two big wealthy men very interested in Carlisle United. Would there be a possibility of putting the two big wealthy men together, and then we could join that, and I think we'd have a very, very affluent, well supported, successful football club.
Which two wealthy men are you talking about, Alan?
One is a certain Irishman who's on the other end of the telephone, and the other one is the other guy who's been actively involved in attempting to purchase the club in the last 12 months.
OK, Michael Knighton, very quickly.
Very quickly, the only solution to this problem is going to be when Alan Steele understands confrontation is not working and must stop. That is the only way progress will be made. There's no question about that. And I think John knows that as well. And until they see sense that confrontation and bickering and arguing and spiteful comments and personalities, that's going to resolve nothing. It just isn't.
Can I say something, Paul?
Yeah.
Paul, I don't think that realistically I can't see the connection between the confrontation and the arguing and the fans and stuff, and whether Michael sells the club or not. But I know who Alan's talking about. It's quite obvious. And Alan would know that I have spoken to that person in the past. And my attitude to the football club is I'm quite happy to share ownership or buy it on my own.
We're talking about
whatever.
Brooks Milson here. Let's just establish that, are we? Brooks Milson.
Yeah, well, Alan didn't decide to use his name, so I don't want to get into it. But the issue is, I would have no problem working with Brooks Milson or anybody else, Brooks Milson or anybody. I just would think, I've looked at the club and I think it's an absolute crying shame.
Is that a possibility then, Michael Knighton, that John and Brooks Milson could come in with a joint bid, perhaps, and you would have no doubt they've got the funds to see it through?
John, would you be happy with less than 75% holding?
Yeah, under circumstances now, I think I would. I think it's more important for me. There's a lot of people who I'd gotten to know and people around Roddy and stuff, and I think reinstating them, putting the football club back into what it should be. I think the potential to develop the football club into a real community asset and to stop all this nonsense is more overriding than the level of control I would have over the club. I mean, I wouldn't want to have a very small interest and no say, but at the same time I would be quite happy if I sat down with someone and we agreed how we wanted to go forward. But I have said this publicly before. I've never made a secret of the fact that I would be quite willing to share ownership once we had clear agreement and goodwill to do the thing. I think it's a shame.
Would you share a shareholding with Michael Knighton then?
No. That just wouldn't work anyway, because Michael's a past owner of the club, and he'd also be somebody who I know Michael reasonably well, and he would definitely want to put his own fingerprints on it, and that wouldn't work for me.
Okay, Michael Knighton.
Well, it's reciprocated, of course. John and I are two similar individuals in many ways, and it can't always work when you've got two very strong characters, two strong entrepreneurs, simply because we may have different views about the future of the football club. But anyway, that's all hypothetical, because everyone knows that's never going to happen. John's obviously, he's changed his view on this, because I know at one time...
Yeah, and at one time I wanted to buy the club, but I mean, I've realised... I'll be honest with you, Michael. I mean, the reason your solicitor, the last solicitor, when they were looking for a final offer, we didn't respond to it, was simply we'd given up. We just said he's not selling the club. And everybody we've spoken to in Carlisle, serious people, reasonable, logical people in Carlisle, were of the same opinion. And Brooks Milson and the various other bidders, you just think, Michael's playing. I have no idea why you would do it and why you would invest the money you did with your legal people or whatever. But, you know, our feeling, and not just my feeling, my accountant, my solicitors, everybody said the guy isn't selling the club.
John, you could solve that question very simply. Enter the money into an account and do the deal like I asked you to do on the 9th of April.
I'll enter the new figure into a thing. That club is not worth anything like what it was then. You've lost £120,000. The profit apparently that you did show last year was 145. Well, that complete profit for this year will be wiped off because you have 120,000 off the bottom line for the TV money gone. There were 7 or 8 home games gone, which would have attracted, in fairness, a much larger crowd. So you would have had probably another £250,000 in. You've let players go. And the thing about letting the players go, the directors let everybody who wasn't in a continuing contract go.
Well, John, it's a moving feast because the industry, as you know, is facing enormous difficulties. It is a moving feast. I have no influence over the day-to-day running of the club, as you know.
No, but I'm saying to you the value of the squad. The value of the squad I would inherit is a lot less. For instance,
John,
players who never got a game this season, like Galloway and whatever, are kept, while players who played all season, like Rodgers and Winstanley, have been released. Now, there's no logic in that. So
but
the
John,
value of the club is reduced, Michael, greatly.
Yeah, John, we never, ever agreed a value on the squad of players. We always said they were outside of any deal we did. I mean, you know that.
I understand that, but I knew what the squad of players were. Yeah. So you do have a feel for what you're doing. I mean, we didn't sit down and individually value players or something, but you do know within the deal what you're buying. You're buying this squad of players. And the issue is that they don't exist anymore. And players who were in the first team and played almost every game this year are gone. And players who never got a look at a ball are there. So that
Carlisle
doesn't make
United
sense.
survived for 80 years without any TV money. They'll survive again. The
I
football
wouldn't be
club is bigger
I'm
than
not
everybody.
interested in having a football club that survives, Michael. If I bought a football club, I'd want it to be successful.
Yeah, football, well, success nowadays is just literally staying in the football
No,
league.
Michael,
believe it or
my
not.
idea of success is definitely not staying in the bottom of the third division.
Well, mine's changed over the years. I've got to be honest. I'd be the first to acknowledge my own ideas of success in this industry have changed dramatically, and I do believe just keeping a football club alive now is success in whatever form.
A question to you, John. Have you ever met Brooks Milson? Has approach been made to meet at all?
No, I've spoken to Brooks Milson a couple of times, and he seemed a very pleasant man. See, I have no problem whatsoever with Brooks Milson.
Okay, a question to Vic Gibson, news editor at the News and Star newspaper up here in North Cumbria. Vic, in your opinion, or maybe the paper's opinion, where did it all start going wrong for Carlisle United? I mean, there's so many theories about this, but in your opinion, where did it start going wrong?
Well, I think it started going wrong halfway into Michael's ownership of the club. First 5 years successful, been well documented. Then some strange decisions have really set in. If there was one moment that pinpointed it, was dismissal of the manager who led them to promotion, Mervyn Day. But since then, it's just been a sequence of decisions that beg a belief a lot of the time. And I think when Michael criticises the News and Star and Qist, it's a smokescreen really for the mismanagement of the club that we are not guilty of. It is he who is guilty of that. And I would just appeal to Michael to give John Courtney or Brooks Milson. I mean, I'm encouraged by the double deal prospect. But I would appeal to Michael to turn over his cards and give these people all the evidence they need, all the documentary evidence, and hope that therefore we can sooner rather than later get a deal done, because mark my words, the people out there fear that the last 3 or 4 years have been bad, but their hopes for next season are absolutely rock bottom at the moment.
Well, that's the same for every football club in the land at the moment, because the whole industry is in a state of massive flux. No one knows what's going to happen. That little football club, which is very precious to everybody in Carlisle, and to myself, whatever anybody has said, the emotional investment, forget about any money, the emotional investment I've put into Carlisle is absolutely unbelievable. It's an institution which is very close to my heart, and I am certainly as great a fan of that football club as Alan Steele, John Wilson has ever been and ever will be. Now, I don't expect some people to believe that because it doesn't fit their agenda, but it's true. And those people who work with me at that football club will tell you the same. Do you regret, Vic, the damage that you've done to the football club and the people who work there, who day in, day out fear for their jobs because of the antics of pressure groups?
No, I regret the damage you've done to the club, Michael.
Well, again, that was, of course, an anticipated and totally predictable response. And it's the difficulties you have. You see, it's an awesomely powerful instrument, is the News and Star. It's the only paper in the town. And whilst ever they have this view about everything to do with the club, you're going to fail in trying to make positive progress.
Can I just say, Michael, I think that you are insulting hugely the intelligence of the people that love our football club. Their opinions are not formed by what they read in the News and Star. They have their own opinions, developed over a period of time. All people I know involved in the football club, who support the football club, we all say, as many people have said this afternoon, look, you did a fine job when you came in. You were a breath of fresh air, put a bit of great spin and PR on the whole thing, and made some good decisions, most notably appointing Mick Wadsworth. Everybody knows nobody knows why that changed. I personally believe it goes back to when Mick Wadsworth left. That was really when the bubble burst for me. I know Mervyn did, on paper, got us promoted again and all that. But in reality, none of us really know why things really changed. Maybe it did come down to investment. But the fact of the matter is that our views, the views of the supporters, are not dictated by what Vic and his colleagues say. They reflect very mildly, to be honest with you, very mildly what we all feel. I feel, I'm sitting across this table looking you straight in the eye, I feel that you are holding me as a fan of Carlisle United to ransom. That's how I feel. Listen, that's how I feel. That's how we feel.
Touché.
Now, none of us like that. We don't like it. That's how we feel, Michael. We've got nothing really against you as an individual. That's what you've done to. That's what you've done to us. We feel that we're being held to ransom unless you get the deal that you want. The implication is our club's going to go down and down and down. That's how we feel.
Michael, we'll give you a chance to respond to this in just a moment. Michael, do you hold Carlisle United supporters as culpable for all the club's woes at present?
Absolutely not. Of course I don't. I mean, that's an absurd situation, Paul. I'm astonished at the profound statement of John Wilson as a lawyer who says that opinions are not created by newspapers. £1 billion plus a year is spent on advertising because newspapers influence opinion. It's as simple as that. The correlation coefficient between hate mail and threats of violence against my family escalate after every bad story this newspaper does. They've had no experience of that. They don't understand what it's like. So I know precisely that opinion is influenced. What I feel terribly sad about is that you've got all this energy and all this resourcefulness in this town. Why on earth didn't the Board of Television organisation, the City Council and the News and Star itself come together when I asked them to 2 years ago with the fans to run the football club? Why on earth didn't they do that?
Well, two of those parties are not here to answer that question, but maybe, Vic, you could answer that.
Well, I think simply we aren't experts in running football clubs. We publish a newspaper, and it's left to people like hopefully John Courtney or Brooks Marsden to run the football club. We'll leave it in their hands.
OK, let's take some questions from supporters. Joining us in the studio is Gerald Armstrong, a Carlisle supporter. Gerald, you've got a question to our panel.
I've got a question for Mr. Knighton, but firstly I'd like to give a little bit of background. A, to let you know that I'm not a member of QIST. B, I'm no great supporter of the newspaper. C, you've made comments about the club was offered to the supporters when we were top of the league in January 1996, was it, Mr. Knighton?
26th of January 1996. It was offered to become the first cooperative in football, and they could have had that happily. Their own accountants and auditors could have been appointed, and the depository of funds could have been placed in there. That was all in the article.
I think you'll probably find in January 96 we're near the bottom of the second division.
Well, the offer was still there.
We certainly weren't top of the league, is what you stated previously.
All I'm saying is...
on to the question, not a problem, just to put you right, though. As I say, I'm no member of QS. What I'd like to comment upon it is what is the total mismanagement of the football club. The decision only this week whereby one day the club makes an announcement that there's a £1 increase across the board other than the concessionary, which presumably must be based upon some sort of background or finances needed to support and to save the club, and within 24 hours you rescinded.
Well, I asked about that because that came to my attention, oddly enough, only just yesterday, and I said, what was the reason for the change? And they said, well, very simple. They looked at a price increase because of the TV crisis, and then they'd sounded several of their colleagues out in the industry. Some were really laying on increases, I think 20%. I think even Alan said Sheffield United put their ticket price up 20%. But the consensus view, having spoken to the directors about it, was that at the end of the day, with the way the future is going to be, lots of players out of jobs, lots of clubs attracting less quality of player perhaps under the situation that they're finding themselves at the moment, did it justify a price increase? And I think in the final analysis their decision was no, it didn't. That's what they explained to me anyway.
Well, it would have not been more sensible to have done that before making an announcement, and B, I find it difficult to understand how we're going to be able to sign any new player in the current situation.
Announcement wasn't made. You're talking about a website apparently that because I did say, well, I agree with you. Let's get this straight. I agree with you. I said, why was it leaked from the club that this might be happening? Well, it was published on a web page, wasn't it, apparently?
From the football club?
That's what, as I say, all I can say is that there's obviously a breakdown of communication somewhere because a final decision hadn't actually been taken.
Well, it certainly came from the football club, and this time last year, decisions were made to sack football players when they're obviously in contract. I mean, anybody that's got a little bit of sense knows that you cannot get rid of anyone that's got a contract purely for the reason that they're making too much money.
Well, I should talk to about 72 football clubs at the moment who are getting rid of players with contracts. I mean, you can, so long as you settle amicably and through arbitration, you can certainly settle contracts. Again, misinterpretation. I'm not going to labour anymore about the fight and battle we have. The only fight and battle we have is everybody should be fighting on the same front and pulling together to save the football club from further strife. Believe it or not, I am not an obstacle to that happening.
Well, that's certainly an impression that's being given prior to and also this afternoon.
Well, here's a proposal then to you, Michael. Yeah, John, we'll come to you in a second, but here's a proposal then to you, Michael. And a proposal to every one of our panellists this afternoon then. If, as you say, everybody works together and stops what you say is a campaign against you, if Curious decide to stop their campaign against you, if the News and Star go on a more positive pro-club tack, which I'm not saying that's the way I perceive it, but that's what you're saying. If John Courtney works with you, will John Courtney's offer be accepted?
Well, I can only repeat, and I'm sorry to keep saying...
Will it be accepted, Michael?
Well, if you let me answer your question, we have asked John to put a revised offer on the table. Let's see what it comes with.
John Courtney in Dublin?
I'll have that in before 12 o'clock on Monday. It's not very difficult, but I'm pretty confident what the reply will be. But, Michael, you know, I'm kind of amazed. I'm not trying to be smart with you. I'm actually starting to admire you, you know, because you can sit there in this embattled position, and I just couldn't do it. And I've been honest with you, I couldn't hack it. But you're saying if we all pull together and this, that, and the other... Honestly, as a neutral, if I'd never had anything to do with this, looking at it from the stance of someone coming from completely outside of Carlisle a few months ago, Michael, you're the only one. It's, you know, it's not like your group and their group. It's you and everybody else.
Well,
nobody
John,
wants
you're not privy to the emails the clubs receive. You're not privy to my mailbag or the club's mailbag. We're not the only ones. What we are fighting here is a massively well-organised pro-lobbyist group with government support and support from Birkbeck University and College, who are being massively proactive on a confrontational basis. That's what we're fighting.
Michael, realistically, Carlisle United is a small club in the 3rd Division. The way you're going on, you think the FBI and the CIA and the bleeding paratroopers were involved.
Absolutely.
No, the government doesn't give a flying fiddlers about Carlisle United. Would you get a grip here? Stop telling me all this.
John, you have a wonderful way of trying to, if you like, demean. Because you are from the outside.
I'm not demeaning it, but
yeah, you are, John. You're demeaning it. You're demeaning.
You think, listen, you know, the next thing the President of America will be trying to influence it. Nobody's involved. You get a grip.
John,
it's just the local people.
It is the local people. John,
yeah.
And the local people are very important to me. They're very important to the club. They are the football club as far as I'm concerned.
I think you follow my string, Michael.
What the great disadvantage is for everybody is that the current management, no matter what they do or what they try to achieve, don't get a fair hearing.
John,
I mean, they just don't.
John Wilson from Curious, very quickly, you got something to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Michael why, a very simple question actually, Michael. When you acquired your controlling interest in the football club in 92, was it 92 or 93?
92.
I'm not privy to the deal. The details of that transaction, but I believe that a sum of money was involved, albeit not very large, and that you basically took over, maybe signed a personal guarantee, or somebody signed a personal guarantee to take on bank liabilities. Why do you believe at this moment in time that you, as the owner of the club, are entitled to receive any more at this moment in time, given the enormous difficulties that the football club faces, than the people who relinquished that ownership in the best interests of the club, as they thought, in 1992? Why do you believe that you're entitled to any more than that at this moment in time?
Ken Bates bought Chelsea for £1 15 years ago. Go and ask him if he'll sell you Chelsea for £1.
We're not talking about Chelsea. Why do you believe? So you think the club's worth a lot more money, do you?
No. Well, you don't know what was actually paid, because the sums that are always banded about
will you tell us?
Totally ridiculous. I paid £75,000 for... I paid for the 75% control... pound par for my shares.
Yeah.
I underwrote the debt of the football club. I paid off VAT bills and some taxation bills, and I also agreed to crystallise 9 directors' personal guarantees at the bank, and some of those guarantees were supported. The total amount came to just under £400,000. The point is this, though, that when I came in 1992, there were 9 local people on the board. At least 6 of them were considerably wealthier than myself. In fact, multi-millionaires. Not one of those directors, save for Andrew Jenkins, had put more than £35,000 in the football club. They were all local. They were all supporters.
You're not answering the question.
Well, I thought I was.
No, you're not. You're not. The question was, why do you believe that you are now entitled to receive more at this moment in time, given the financial position of the club, than the people who owned the 93% received in 92?
They didn't own 93%.
Or whatever. Whatever the shareholder. I know you acquired. People gave you shares thereafter, didn't they? Well, whatever it was, whatever the percentage was you acquired to give control.
You see, what you've got.
Why do you think you're entitled to more now?
If I could answer the question.
Well, will you?
You see, yes, I will. If you give me half a minute. The point is here. You see, you've got a fan here. That's what he is. John Wilson's a fan of the football club with the same mentality that the fans have had 20, 30 years ago about what football clubs are today. Football club, that company, let's talk about it for a company for a moment, has had £8 million audited pounds worth of investment gone into it. It has...
Investment? What do you mean by investment?
On the stadium itself.
You mean... all right,
on the stadium itself.
Yeah, but where's that money come from, though?
That money has come from the management of the company, which has directed its fortunes over the last 10 years.
Where's it come from?
It's come like all businesses out of generated funds.
It's come out of the sale of players.
Oh, you see, you're dealing here with someone...
It hasn't come out from external investment. It's come from the sale of existing assets.
You are coming here with someone with a primitive view of a football model. And you're always going to have a difficulty trying to convert them that the game has moved on.
Right. Can you answer the question, please? Why do you believe that you're entitled to more than those people received in 92?
Those people in 1992...
They stood aside.
Those people, they stood aside because the club was literally going bankrupt.
And it isn't now?
I think all clubs are on the verge.
What makes you believe that you should receive more now?
Anything like... You see, you're part of a group that would desperately like those... a shareholding and desperately like to see a change.
We would like to see a change in ownership. Yeah. Whether it involves Curious is another issue. We would like to see a change in ownership, and you still haven't answered the question.
Well, I have answered the question to you. I believe that the game has moved on, and you are entrenched in a model that is prehistoric and doesn't exist anymore.
No, it's a valuation point. Is what I'm trying to get at, Michael.
Because it's an investment of my family, which we own. I'm not going to agree. I'm not going to agree with you about what I should expect to receive. A considerable sum of money.
How much have you invested in it?
I personally guaranteed more than...
How much money have you invested in it? Not have you guaranteed?
I personally have guaranteed and invested considerable sums of money.
Well, where does it... doesn't show that in the accounts where money's come in.
Well, excuse me, you see, you're speaking to a professional who is so prejudiced against my position, he won't even let me finish a sentence.
Well, I just
Why don't you come and inspect? Michael. Well, the answer is... what I've just explained. We have invested enormous sums of money in that football club under my tenureship as chairman.
The company has invested in the stadium. It sold players. It sold the...
No, excuse me, that is untrue. External... there has been £3.5 million. Well, how does business work? You're supposed to be a lawyer. I'll tell you what. I wouldn't pay this man. I don't know if he's a corporate lawyer, but if this is his simplistic and naive view of how business works, whether it's a chip shop or Tesco's or a football club, it just simply exposes the man's understanding of business.
Okay, look,
what he's saying is no investor should ever insist on a return.
Michael, you were just talking with respect. Total rubbish.
John, we could talk about this for a lot longer. I'm sure John Courtney in Dublin wants to have a word.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, you're talking from two very different points here. I think, in fairness, Michael, when a company is in operation and when you use the money within the company to do various things, it's not really an investment in the company. It's just a rolling over in the use of your capital funding.
John, directors are there to grow companies and improve them. Yeah, and if anybody denies that we haven't grown and improved that company's assets, then they don't know what they're looking at.
I'm not trying to be difficult here, Michael. I'm not going to have a go at you. I'm just, at this particular occasion, I'm just trying to stop this bickering between the two.
I know, it is silly bickering, which I resent.
Because I think the wording is wrong. You're saying investment, and normally it wouldn't be regarded as investment. It's just use of internal working capital, right? John. It's not investment.
The point is...
Michael, hold on just one second. And the other aspect of it, so it's just internal working of the club. And he is asking you, I mean, you could stop all this by answering his question.
Yes, I will do. The fundamental premise that John Wilson is coming for is that if you own a business, you should, for charitable reasons, give it away when the time comes. That's what his premise is.
Michael, that's not true. You're moving the goalposts. Stop. Can I just say this? Michael,
hold on, Michael. Because we've grown the assets to a substantial amount of money.
Michael, just give me 1 second. The question, as I understood it, was, why would you expect to get more for your shares than you paid for them when the company is in a poorer situation now. I think
it is
that's
not
what
in a
Christian-
poorer situation. That is a total misrepresentation of the company. When I went to Brunton Park in 1992, not one penny had been spent on that stadium for about 40 years. It had no external assets. As we speak today, the company's got an offer of £525,000 on the table for 1.5 acres of land about a quarter of a mile away from the stadium. It owns 8 properties. Hang on, let me finish. It is asset rich to the tune of £3.6 million. When I went there, it had no assets other than a broken down, totally derelict stadium. Fact. And we've got a professional lawyer, I hope people are listening, we've got a professional lawyer wondering why the owner of that investment
Michael,
after 10 years should suddenly want to put a better value
we're
on
rapidly
it. It's
running
unbelievable.
out. Michael, we're rapidly running out of time. Apologies we can't get through all of the questions. I want to quickly wrap up by going round to everybody. If I can come to News and Stars news editor Vic Gibson first, if I may. Vic, do you think anything positive can be achieved by withdrawing your campaign against Michael Knighton?
Well, I don't really. I'm a bit confused about why Michael, if his family and himself are receiving such vilification, why he doesn't say, I've had enough of this, take the offer that's on the table, and then everyone's happy then. He gets his payday, the club get the fans get their club back, and I don't really see what the problem is, why someone like John Courtney, Brooks Marston, the previous board, cannot conclude a deal with Michael Knighton. I think only he knows the answer to that.
It's very simple. I'm dealing here with people with a prehistoric notion about what football clubs are. I'm the greatest football fan anyone will ever meet. My ancestors have been involved in this business since 1890 professionally. Fact. I've grown up with the industry from the cradle. I was once a professional footballer. I'm telling you now, these people are fans with a completely archaic point of view about what they represent as football clubs and what the institutions are.
Okay.
They should be put... can I just finish this point? It's important. The fan group should be pulled together and people should come in and say, look, these decisions taking the club forward would be made by John Wilson, Alan, Vic Gibson, Michael Knighton. The same decisions would be made by anyone over the last 10 years. Those are the facts that they simply can't get their head around.
Okay,
that's the problem.
Let me put a question to Alan Steele, who's been waiting very patiently. Just finally from you, Alan, where do you see the immediate future of the football club lying?
The immediate future has got to be new ownership. Michael Knighton believes we are confrontational because we say that the fans just won't go through the gates, they won't invest any money in the club under his ownership. That's the way it is. Whether we like that, whether he likes it, that's just the situation. I don't see where the confrontation comes into that. That's reality. What we need now is new owners to step into the breach. As soon as there is new ownership, we shall also contribute our funds to the football club, and I'm sure it can be an enormous success. With a fan base of 500,000 people in Cumbria, many of whom are determined to see the club do well, then we should be sitting in the first division. That can only happen whether Michael Knighton likes that, or whether Alan Steele likes that, or whether anybody else likes that. That's the situation. Okay. It can only happen under new ownership.
Okay, let me put a question to John Courtney in Dublin then. Finally from you, John. Will you be putting in, can you confirm you will be putting in a new offer for the club on Monday? And it's a question as well to Michael. Will you please promise to give that a speedy and public response to this offer? That's from Roger Paulson.
Last time Monday by 5 o'clock. Simple as that.
I will have an offer. I will have an offer in the club on Monday. I just wanted to know, I didn't know Michael was a professional footballer because he has the best accent for a professional footballer I've ever heard.
John, just again to clarify, we've mentioned Brooks Marston, who is listening to the show this afternoon. Is that still a possibility that you may enter into conversation with Brooks and may even consider putting forward a joint bid for the club?
I can't speak for Brooks Marston, but I personally would be quite happy to talk to anybody who has the interest of the club at heart, and I do think the club needs to change ownership. Whether I'm involved or not, at the end of the day, the club needs to change. I think Michael's done his time there, and the club has done its time with him. I think it needs to change.
Michael Knighton, give Carlisle United supporters some hope this evening. Will the ownership of the club change in the immediate future?
It will certainly change when people pull together, work properly, have non-confrontational campaigns, sit down, be grown up, be mature and sensible. That is the way to secure the future of this great club of ours, and I love it like they do. And they will see right will be proved to be right in the ultimate final analysis. They will see Everything will come out in the wash, Paul, at the end. But let me tell you this, the future of that football club needs the supporters to take it forward. I will cooperate with them like I am doing with those non-confrontational people who have already come forward. They can have the control of my shareholding without one single problem, because they're decent people, they haven't been threatening, and they haven't been confrontational. And time will tell, Paul. Let's watch this space.
OK, I'm afraid we're out of